Hey guys, it's Christy and welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for joining me. I have decided it is time to do an updated ranking of all of my Natasha Denona eyeshadow palettes. So before we get into it, I hope you'll consider subscribing to my channel before you leave. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoy, and let's get into it. Okay, so I think a couple of years ago I ranked all of my palettes. Last year I ranked all of my minis. But given that my collection has grown and I now have 25 total eyeshadow palettes from Natasha Denona, I've decided it's time to re-rank them. So let's hop right into it. Coming in at number 25 is one that was actually a BoxyCharm exclusive, and this is the Jubilee palette. So this one is really falling in line with her sort of pastel range that she has. And I believe at the time these were all re-release shades. A lot of these were in the Safari or the Tropic palette. So I've used this one a couple of times, mostly in combination with the larger pastel palette that she has. This just isn't one that I reach for a ton. I don't find the color story to be the most cohesive. I don't use a ton of pastels regularly, so this just isn't one I get a ton of use out of. I will say this one here, it looks like a black. It really is more of a navy blue, and it is incredibly pigmented. So using this shade, I want to make sure to use a base because it will stain. But otherwise, I think this is very pretty. The quality is great. It's just not a color story I reach for that often. Coming in at number 4 is a very similar palette. This is the Mini Pastel, and this one was released, I believe, this past Christmas. So this will actually be counted in my year-end rankings for this year. But this one I do think is pretty. Again, the color story just really is not cohesive, but I did still manage to create a video trying out different looks with this palette. The reason this one ranks higher than the Jubilee is this shade right here, which is called Aurora, is a duochrome. So it kind of, it's like this bronzy gold, but it's got like a mint green shift to it in certain lights, and it's also pink, so it can really pair with the pink or the green to create a really interesting look. And for that reason, this one ranked higher than the Jubilee. I think the color story is even less cohesive, but this duochrome got it some extra points. Again, the formula is great. It's just not a palette I reach for very often at all. Coming in at number 3 is another mini. This is the Mini Sunset, and I believe this is one of the first minis she came out with. The quality on this is not bad, but it's not up to par with her current quality, if that makes sense. And this one I think is very, very pretty. These browns are gorgeous. It's this red that throws me, and I don't know what to do with it. You can definitely create a look using all of these, but I think this kind of sparkly red just throws me completely off when I just have these warm tone browns. It just throws me off, so for that reason this one ends up getting ignored, and also because it was one of her earlier minis, I just don't think the quality is as good. Coming in at number 22 is the first midi palette in this ranking, and this is actually the Zendo palette. So this one had a lot of mixed reviews when it first came out. People either loved it or hated it. I will say, if you don't like the cream to powder formula, you might not like this. And I think part of what caused some confusion with this palette is that it's kind of divided into warm tones and cool tones, and I really think that was a little bit confusing. I know there is a way you can mix the warm tones and cool tones and make it work. I personally haven't been able to do that in a way that makes me happy. When I use this, I tend to either stick to the warm side or the cool tone side. It's either or for me. And I think for that reason, I don't reach for this palette as often as maybe I could. I do like it. I think the quality on this is fine. I definitely heard others say that they don't like the quality. That's not a complaint for me. I actually really do like the quality. I think this is very, very pretty. It's just not a color story I reach for as often, especially when it just feels very divided and that I kind of have to stick to one end of the palette or another. That might not be true for you if you are a little bit more, I guess, visually creative. But for me, this just isn't a color story that gets me as excited as some of the others. Okay, coming at number 21 is the Mini Gold. So I am somebody who never tried the full-size gold palette. But the thing is, I don't really love these yellow golds on my eyes. Personally, if I am going for something like that, it is typically more of a bronze. And for that reason, I really don't get as much use out of this. I really want to, because looking at it, I think the color story is very, very pretty. So I do kind of want to make a point to use this more. It's just, for some reason, I do not gravitate towards it. So that's why it's sitting here. There's nothing wrong with it. I just don't gravitate toward it. Coming in at number 20 is the Pastel palette. This packaging is actually some of my very favorite packaging she has on any of her palettes. I think this is gorgeous. I just don't gravitate towards pastels like I mentioned earlier. Sometimes in the spring, that is when I will bring this out and try to create some more creative looks. And I do love it, especially when I grab the mini pastel or the Jubilee and use it in companion to this. I think that is really, really nice, and I think you can create some really beautiful looks. This one can stand on its own though, and that's why this one is ranking higher than the other two. Of course, they only have 5 shades, but this one just gives me so much more to work with, and I can make this one make sense. I really love this shade here. This one is called Illusion, and it's kind of a duochrome, which is really, really fun. And then these other shades are just really, really beautiful. They're easy to work with. This is one of the only pastel palettes in my collection. These 3 right here are probably the only ones, and I think that just goes to show how much I enjoy Natasha's formula and how much I trust her formula, because if I'm going to step so far out of my comfort zone with pastels, I think it has to be Natasha Denona. So I think this is a beautiful palette. Again, just not a color story I reach for. Coming in at number 19, I believe, is another BoxyCharm exclusive, and this is the Peak palette. I love this one especially for fall. So you get a really nice range of mattes here, and then you get a really pretty shimmer, which is called Shine. This one is actually in the full-size Viva, and I think her BoxyCharm exclusive palettes usually are shades that are already in other palettes. Like, I don't think she comes out with brand new shades, but I do think this is really, really beautiful. I think it's a great quality palette. I don't reach for it as often because it is a BoxyCharm exclusive, so I don't like to use it on camera. But I do think this is beautiful, especially for the fall, given these really warm, toasty, orangey browns. I think it's beautiful. Coming in at number 18 is a palette I've actually had an up and down relationship with, and this is the mini Zendo palette. So this one is interesting because I really don't see a connection between this one and the full-size Zendo at all, but I do think it's super, super beautiful. This is one that initially when I look at it, I don't necessarily know exactly what I want to do with it, but I can also create some really, really pretty looks. So it does get a lot of points from me. I haven't used this in a while, so this is another one that I need to make a point to use a little bit more. I know Kelly Gooch has raved about this one, and she always creates some really, really pretty looks, and every time I see her wearing this palette, I think to myself, I've got to dig that one out. I've got to use it again. I think this is beautiful, and this one surprises me every single time I wear it. The quality is great. So I really do like this one. I just need to remember to reach for it more. So coming in at number 17 is the mini Metropolis. So this one is very pretty. All of the shades in here are in the full-size Metropolis. I think it is very, very pretty. I really don't need it because I have the full-size Metropolis, and it does rank higher than this one, but I do think this is pretty. This is going to be better for traveling. This is another palette that I like more toward the fall, just given these deeper warm tones. The blue I really don't use that much, but I do think this is a really pretty one. The quality is fabulous. Coming in at number 16 is the last BoxyCharm exclusive, and this one is in Ayanna. This is really pretty. This is definitely a color story I love. It has all of these cool tone browns that I think are so beautiful. I don't know what other palettes these shades come from. There might be some from Viva, but I do think this is beautiful. These larger 5 pans are actually just a really, really nice size. The shimmers in here are so beautiful. Again, I'm a big fan of those cool tone browns, so I've been loving this one. The quality is great. This is another one that I really love. I just don't reach for it as often because I can't use it on camera, so I kind of make a point to not use it when I'm filming, but I do really love this one. The color story is perfect. Coming in at number 15 is the Love palette. I love this one. I love pink, and I think this one is so pretty. I know this is another one that kind of got mixed reviews. I've heard people say they don't like the quality. I've heard people say they absolutely love this palette. I absolutely love it. I do tend to go for those pinks and purples more in the springtime, but I do think this is so beautiful. I love the pop of silver. I love some of these other shades up here. So pretty, so easy to work with. I love a good pink eyeshadow look, and this one is so easy to look at and figure out exactly what I want to do. I just think it's pretty. Coming in at number 14 is the Retro Glam palette. So this one I think is very, very beautiful. This was her holiday release for 2022. And I think this one is beautiful. I know a lot of people, especially at the time this came out, commented that this is more like a spring color story, and I do agree with that. I really do. With these softer shades, these more muted greens, almost pastel, not quite, but almost. So I can totally see that. One thing I will note is that a lot of the shimmers in here they almost seem a bit lackluster, but I think that's because they have a sort of frostiness to them, like a sort of frosty look, and I think that is what gives them that more wintry kind of effect, if that makes sense. I don't know if you can see those swatches, but they really just do have that more frosty kind of effect, which does make me think winter. So I can see why she did release this in the winter time. I do think it's very, very pretty. I think these greens are beautiful. I think what this palette does lack is a little bit more depth. The darkest shade we have is Evergreen, and it really isn't that dark. So it is like a deeper forest green, but maybe something even deeper might have been nice with this one. Again, we do have these deeper browns over here, but they are shimmery browns. So like a nice deeper matte I think would have pulled this together a little bit better, but I do think it's beautiful. Coming in at number 13 is the newest palette to my collection, and this is the Yucca palette. I've been loving this. This is so beautiful. This is one that kind of forces me out of my comfort zone. I do love green eyeshadow, but I don't typically go for these yellows. And when this one was first revealed, I thought, I'm definitely going to get it. I want to review it. And I love green, so maybe I can make this work. But the yellows definitely intimidated me a lot. However, since getting this one, since using it, it's a lot more wearable than I thought it would be. I've been having so much fun with it. And this palette has a lot of her sparkling foiled formula in here, and they are so, so beautiful. And I've said this every time I've played with this palette, but every time, this one here is a regular metallic, which looks very, very beautiful. But when you swatch it next to the sparkling foiled, it looks so lackluster. The sparkling foiled formula is really, really beautiful. If you love a good sparkle, those are gorgeous, and I think that's what keeps driving this palette home for me, is how sparkly those shades are. I love them so, so much. Again, I do have a full review of this palette as well as a 3 looks 1 palette video. I love this one. Coming in at number 12 is a palette I mentioned earlier on, and this is the Metropolis palette. So I hate that she made this one limited edition because it's beautiful, and I actually really like this softer outer packaging that she used to do for her larger palettes. I kind of wish she would bring that back, but this palette is gorgeous. This palette is one I consistently reach for in the fall. I think it's so beautiful. You have all of these warm browns, you get some sparkly golds, and then you get the blues and the greens. So the reason I like this so much more than the mini is because there's just so much more to build off of. Again, you get all of these greens, and you can create a full green look. You could even go full blue. You can go just very, very neutral. This pop of red makes a lot more sense when used with these shades. So I love this Metropolis palette. I think it's so beautiful. There's so many shades in here. There's so many options. I would love to see more of these palettes from her. So this one retails for the same price as her full-size Viva, but those palettes have 15 shades. This one has 28. So this one is actually, in my opinion, worth that steep price tag, and I would absolutely grab a palette in this format if she released another one in the future. I think it's great. The quality is amazing. And again, you just have so many options. I love it. Coming in at number 11 is the Mini Glam palette. This one is another one that has gotten a lot of love for me. This reminds me quite a bit of the Ayanna palette, just with these cool tone browns. But this palette, I love. This one just creates such a beautiful look every single time. It's so seamless. It just makes good sense when you look at it, and it's so, so pretty. This one has been one of my favorites in my collection for a long time. The fact that there are 10 palettes ranking higher is impressive to me. So I really do love this. I think this is one of her very best minis. If you prefer those more cool tone browns, but you don't want to spend a ton of money and grab the midi Glam, which totally fair, I would totally recommend this. I think this is gorgeous. Coming in at number 10 is the bronze palette. This one has been used a lot. It is these warm tone browns I love. I don't always love going super warm toned with my looks, but these super warm tone browns really bring out blue eyes. So if you have blue eyes, this palette is going to look amazing. But I will say it is true, a lot of the looks end up looking very, very similar. I kind of said the same thing about the Yucca palette. I feel like a lot of the looks end up looking similar. Same with this. I think that's true also. If you don't mind that, you will not mind this palette. I think you would love this. This is a gorgeous, gorgeous palette. So easy to work with. I mean, you can't go wrong with a full palette of browns. But again, just so, so beautiful. Coming in at number 9 is the Mini Love palette. I love this one. So this one is really, really pretty. I love how this one leans a little bit more purple. You do get this pink shade, but everything else, but these three down here, lean much more purple. And then you have this beautiful champagne shade. Really, really beautiful to create a full look. What I typically do is I'll use this shade here, R, in the crease. I'll use this one as like a liner and then kind of wing it out. And then I'll either pop this one all over the lid. I've done it with this one. And then I'll pop one of the shimmers all over the lid. I often use this as an inner corner shade. I just love this palette. It's such an easy way to get a pinky purple kind of look without having to think too much about it. The quality is great. Love it. This is definitely one of my favorites. Coming in at number 8 is the Mini Retro palette. So this one I really do love. I think it's beautiful. It really kind of is split. So you get these two pinky shades, these grayish green shades, and then you get Galaxia, which looks a little bit more pink, but it is a chroma crystal. So it is incredibly shiny and metallic, and you can pop it over top of the pinks to make the pink sparkle so much, or you can pop it over top of this shade here and just give it such a beautiful sparkle. I think she did such a great job with this one. This palette is the reason everyone was demanding a midi retro, and then we got the first retro palette, and then people were demanding more of these greens, and that's when we got the retro glam. I really, really love this one. I really love Galaxia. It's one of my favorite shades in her entire range. I know there is a new palette. There is a new mini coming out, I believe, next month. I think August 15th is the release date for that, but it does contain Galaxia, and I am so excited about that. So this is another palette that it is so simple to create a very, very easy look that is also just really sparkly and pretty and interesting. So I really do love the Mini Retro. I think she did a great job with that one. Coming in at number 7 is the Mini Bronze. So this one, when I first tested it out, I thought, I really, really like this, but I really don't need it if I have the midi bronze, and that is true. And the thing with the midi bronze is that, like I mentioned, you have 15 shades, but all of the looks end up looking similar. This one just kind of pulls the best out of that and creates a very simple look. I do wish there was perhaps one more shimmer, maybe a lighter shimmer or something like that. But otherwise, all of the looks I create with this, again, with my blue eyes, I love how they look. I've definitely grown to love this one a lot more since I first reviewed it. You are limited in the range of looks you can come out with, but at the same time, you're limited with the midi anyway. So this one I honestly think is kind of the better option just because it's smaller, it's less expensive, and you're gonna get a similar look regardless. So I really love this one. Coming in at number 6 is the Viva palette. So this one I ended up getting an amazing deal on Sephora, I believe around the holidays. This is a palette that had been on my wish list for a long time. I am a neutrals girl. I love boring neutral brown eyeshadow. So of course this one was on my list for a really long time. It is really expensive, so I had held off, but when I got a deal, I could not pass it up. I love this. This is beautiful. I love that you get some true neutral browns. You get a row of more warm browns, and then you get some cool tones on the bottom. They all work together so beautiful, so easily. There are quite a few of her cream to powder formulas in here, so if you don't like that formula, this might not be your favorite. I really was surprised to see that there really is only 3 shimmers in here. But at the same time, I noticed I don't really miss them as much. And I mean, how much can you really do with brown shimmers? So I think this is the most perfect palette. It is so complete. I wanted the Makeup by Mario Master Mats for a long time, but once I got this, it was just really kind of unnecessary. So I do love this. I think it's wonderful. Coming in at number 5 is the Mini Nude. I love this one. Again, this is another one that is just so simple, so easy to use. You just know what you want to do when you look at it. So easy, and every look just looks so pretty and elevated. So I really love this one. Again, so easy to use, such a go-to for me. I absolutely love this one. I almost brought this one on vacation this year. I didn't because I brought my favorite palette, but I do love this one. Coming in at number 4 is my dream palette. This one is so pretty. This really is the perfect color story. It's definitely a little deeper, a little more grungy, but I love how you get some deeper purples in here. You get a black in here, you get these neutral browns, some peachier tones. This is just such an all-encompassing palette that I really love it. It really just adds in my love of neutrals with some of my warm tones and some of my more purple loving tones, and then you get these incredibly shiny shades like Spontaneous and Thrill. So beautiful. Thrill is incredibly sparkly. I really love Thrill. And this is actually the palette I have on today. I keep meaning to say that. So today I used Unity in the crease, and then I built it up a little bit with Carpe Diem. I deepened the outer corners with Aspiration, and then I used Babies all over the lid, and then I actually used Spontaneous on the inner corner. So this palette I love so much. It's probably also my personal dream palette. I think the color story is almost perfect. If I were to create my very own palette, I think there would be a lot of similarities with this one. There would be differences, but I do think this is a very beautiful palette. I think she did such a good job with this one, but this is another one because it does have a certain grungier element to it. I see this as more of a fall palette, which I don't mind at all. I do absolutely love it. Coming in at number 3 is the Glam palette. So this is one that is a lot of people's favorite, and I can totally see why. This is a very cool toned neutral dream. You get so many options. They are so beautiful. You get a lot of shimmers. I do think this palette is a bit shimmer heavy, but if you like that, that's not going to be an issue. If you love cool tones, again, you're not going to have an issue. I love the range of mattes you get in here. Again, this is just a super easy palette to go for every day. It never lets me down. I never have to think about what I want to do, and I always love the looks I come out with. Coming in at number 2 is the Retro palette. So when this one came out, this one was kind of in response to the mini retro, and then she released this one, and a lot of people were disappointed that they had wanted to see a lot more greens, but I was not disappointed. I love this color story so much. I love pinks and purples. I love a good mauve moment. So pretty. The shades Glitz and Psychedelic are absolutely gorgeous. There is a lot of cream to powder shades in here as well, so if you don't like that formula, I'll probably stay away from this palette, but I absolutely love the look I come up with every single time. I feel so pretty when I'm wearing a more mauve eyeshadow look, and I always feel pretty when I'm wearing this palette. I really love this one. I think this is probably, well, given that it's number 2 in my collection, I would say it's definitely one of her best without a doubt, but I think it is very hard to beat this one. However, there is one palette that has beat the Retro and every other palette in my collection, and some might think this is a very boring choice, but this is the Mini Viva palette. This is my favorite eyeshadow palette of all time. And I know that's a bold statement, but it truly is. If you look at the shimmer here right in the middle, which is Blaze Nude, you can see how well loved it is. I am going to hit pan on that shade at any time. I love this because I love the peachy tones. I think they're very, very flattering, especially on my very fair skin. And this shimmer, there is something so special about this champagne rosy toned shimmer. I love how it looks on my eyes. I always feel so pretty when I wear Blaze Nude all over the lid. With these peachy tones blended out throughout the crease, I usually use this darker brown as a liner. This is a cream to powder formula up here, so it ends up leaning a little bit more peachy than deep brown like it looks. So everything in this palette is just so beautiful. I still find it funny that when I initially reviewed this palette, I thought it's really pretty, but it's nothing special. And now it's my favorite palette of all time, mostly because I just keep reaching for it. I keep gravitating toward it. I want to use it. I want to play with it. I want to put it on my eyes because I always love how the looks come out. I'm obsessed with the shimmer in this one. This is one that when I use up the shimmer, which is going to be the first one to go, I will repurchase this palette. I love it so, so much. There was a moment a few months ago where it looked like this one might be getting discontinued and I almost panic bought another one. I'm hoping this is permanent forever, never ever going away. I love it so much. This is the one I brought on vacation with me. I went away for a week back in May, and this is the only palette I brought with me. I didn't need anything else, and I'm so happy I did. And that is it. Those are my 25 Natasha Denona eyeshadow palettes. Let me know down below, what are your favorites from Natasha? Do we have any in common? I know a lot of you, whenever I talk about the mini Viva, also seem to love the shimmer in here, so I know that is something special. But that is it for me today. If you're new here, I hope you'll consider subscribing before you go. I do upload at least 3 new videos every single week. Thank you again so very much for watching, and I will see you in my next one. Bye!